Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good. Okay, so thank you very much. And you already sang, you were chanting to the Supreme Mother today. And Radha, of course, is very dear to us. And we'll talk a little bit about mothers from the Vedic context. So, this is always a good day to reflect on. We were holding the Festival of Inspiration in Vrindavan on Mother's Day weekend, and that went really strong for a long time. And it was our first big festival of the year, like springtime. And then something happened managerially, and then COVID came in to make it difficult for all of us. But anyways, we'll do the best we can. All right, so Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Sai Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vicharini Nirvishi Shangavari Paschatya Tarini. I just felt that I had to do it one more time. Okay, Mother's Day. Everybody likes Mother. Making my reference Bhagavad Gita. It's a dialogue between two dudes, between Krishna and Arjuna. And however, the dialogue is meant for everybody, man, woman, and child, elderly. There's a notion and mention, of course, of a very noble woman throughout the Bhagavad Gita, and in the form of Kaunteya. Kaunteya means the son of Kunti, and we're referring to Arjuna, of course. And Arjuna represents us in many ways. Somebody who struggles in life, somebody who has difficulty, and let's say has ups and downs and challenges like anything. But Krishna constantly reminds Arjuna of his mother's side as well as his father's side. So we'll talk about fathers next month if we get a chance. But this day is reserved for Mama. And so we like this day all over the world. People love their mothers. And I think fathers are a little underrated, but we'll talk about that next month. So what about mom? So Kaunteya, that refers to Arjuna as the noble son of a very, very special lady, Kunti. She mothered or looked after 5 incredible men, the Pandavas. One thing that kind of sticks out in my mind, the pastime where Arjuna comes back from a tournament and he says, "Mom," I'm just putting it in the modern day context, "I just won a great prize in a tournament." And then his mother Kunti says, "Oh, well, that's wonderful. Whatever you've won, you must share it with your brothers." No, Mom, you don't understand. I won a princess. And Kunti says, "You heard me. Whatever you have won, you must share it with your brothers." She was saying, that is providence. It slipped out of my mouth, my words, and so it's meant to be. So from that point on, Arjuna, with no malice and with no, let's say, trace of jealousy amongst the brothers at all, they all accepted and married the princess Draupadi, and they all looked after her. What a nice pastime that one was, and there you see the power of what the mother had to say, and it kind of like stuck. Now, the reason why Krishna keeps saying Kaunteya is that, well, listen, Arjuna, you're kind of all over the place here, but let's get grounded here. Let's think about your mom. Let's think about your ancestry from your mother's side. And let's think about from your father's side. We'll say you're saying Bharat, Sayana Bharat, which means that great king of the past who, in the end of his term, he renounced everything, and so on and so forth. So Krishna kept mentioning about these, the paternal and maternal side, how it's important to relate and connect to your parents or your ancestors, because they stood for something, and usually they stood for high values, virtues, and so on like that. So we can never, forget them. I know when I was a young fellow when I joined the movement, probably around the same time Akila Nanda did, and we had this notion, well, parents aren't important, right? Just renounce, reject. You reject everything, and they're not important. But then here we dive into the scripture, the Shastra, and it's saying, well, it looks like parents are kind of important, aren't they? So here we go. Now, specifically, where is the reference to mothers? There's a few places, and Prabhupada does quote Chanakya Pandit, who said that for men, all women are to be considered like your mother, except for your wife. That's a little different. But in other words, RESPCT, in brackets, Aretha Franklin, just, RESPCT, show respect, ultra respect. Krishna also identifies himself as being the father and the mother, that he's both genders. In other words, when we think about God, we think about, someone who's the protector, someone who's the provider, and nurturer. Someone we're talking about nurturing. This is usually some attribute that goes to the lady's side more so. And so therefore, when we talk about God, G-O-D, or the divine with a capital D, we refer to both sexes, both genders. And so this is what kind of shines in our tradition. In fact, here in Canada, we're opening up a new center in Huntsville. It's in cottage country. And we decided what kind of deities we're going to have in there. Well, we'll have Radha and Krishna. We'll say this is the divine male and the divine female, or the ultimate father and ultimate mother. And that keeps everybody kind of happy when you see that there's these two genders that are reflected in the personality of Godhead. I'm going to refer to chapter 10 from Bhagavad Gita, Opulence of the Absolute, text 34. If you have a Bhagavad Gita there, please open it up, okay? And we're going to look at the list of what is considered some of the opulences of the Absolute. Okay, so first of all—
Which chapter, Maharaj, please?
That's chapter 10. Chapter 10, text 34. Opulence of the Absolute. So I'll give you the Sanskrit, and then we'll go through some of the important points that are contained in here. Mrityu sarvaharas chaham, udbhavas cha vishyatam, kirti shriyar vak chanarinam, smritir meda dhriti shama. Translation. This is Krishna talking and how he can be identified. I am all devouring death, and I'm the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Among women, I am fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience. So I thought we can talk about these things a little bit. Srila Prabhupada just mentions these are feminine qualities. 7 opulences listed: fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience are considered feminine. If a person possesses all of them or some of them, he becomes glorious. If a man is famous as a righteous man, that makes him glorious. Sanskrit is a perfect language and is therefore very glorious. If after studying one can remember a subject matter, he is gifted with a good memory or smriti, and the ability not only to read many books on different subject matters, but to understand them and apply them when necessary is intelligence, meta, and other opulence. The ability to overcome unsteadiness is called firmness or steadfastness, dhriti. And when one is fully qualified, yet is humble and gentle, and one is able to keep his balance both in sorrow and in the ecstasy of joy, he is the opulence called patience, shama. So because Prabhupada came from that background where in English, classical English, or imperialistic English, the male gender is always used to say the term he instead of she. But well, what we might consider is that there's a she and a he in everybody. And so many people have studied the male psychology and the psyche of the female, have all identified, well, there's some maleness in everyone and some femaleness, or there might be one dominant person, and it's best to just accept that. But we all should be reflecting some of these qualities, like, say, fame. When you think of some really good quality people in the feminine body, like I think of Michelle Obama. I thought she was really outstanding woman, like well-educated, very refined. She could hold herself really well. No, she was just like a perfect match to her husband. They complemented each other so well. And I think she became quite respected and world famous just for her disposition, the way she carried herself, basically. And on those grounds, she was famous. In the Vedic context, we have lots of fantastic ladies, and it was Nityananda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, you can say, spiritual brother's wife, Janavi Devi, who insisted, let's have some female deities in our culture. And, it's nice to have Krishna there, but why don't we put a Mataji next to him? So it was decided that there would be a female deity along with Krishna, the perfect counterpart. So who do we have? You can help me with this. We have Radharani, and of course we have Rukmini, and that we have in other leelas or other avatars. We have Sita, who's the consort of Ram, and since we already talked about Kunti, Kunti was outstanding in many ways, and as well as Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas. And so Sita Ram's there, and we have Lakshmi to Narayan, and we also have Shiva and Parvati. They're very dedicated to each other. One of my favorite stories in the Bhagavatam is to do with Sati and Shiva. And that's one of the plays we put together. We did it in a sort of contemporary style once. I did this in South Africa, and we had all the boys and girls. They were black, brown, white, and we all had them up there going to the big event. The boys were looking spiffy with untucked shirts, and I was in charge of the costume department, but it was one of the ladies was, and the girls were dressed very prettily, and it was just so well executed. And then everything looks really nice for a while, and then Daksha, the father of Sati, turns sour. He never had a good relationship with his son-in-law. And at the end of the story goes that Sati, she was so protective of her husband that she decided to give herself up and burn herself up because she was a prized yogini. So she couldn't stand to have her father I'm sorry, your husband, insulted by your father, and she felt that he was just acting like a jerk. I just want to say that, a divine jerk, because she hadn't seen her father for so long, and he wasn't paying any attention to her. He was totally ignoring her, only for the fact that she's married to somebody he didn't like. He just couldn't get over it. So she decided to give up her body. And then Shiva, once that news traveled to him, he retaliated. He was like that perfect sort of, that maleness that you would find. I'm going to protect my woman. I'm going to retaliate. I'm going to get back at Kim. So Shiva came and he released his army, his Shiva army, his followers, his dutas, and they all retaliated against Daksha's people. The story is quite detailed, and when we enacted on the stage, it was great because we had all the guys doing break dance and all the girls were going crazy in the audience. Woo! We actually hired some professional rap, hip break dancers to do the job. And when we asked them, can you do some stuff? Well, we need shoes. So then, okay, they were supposed to look like Shivites. So they put socks over their shoes. And this way they looked a little Vedic. But anyways, they were doing these flips and everybody was just going crazy. It was a wonderful production. Love to do it in Cleveland someday. So anyway, Sati demonstrated her commitment to her husband. And likewise, Shiva committed himself to his wife and came to her aid, even though she had passed away. Some artists, they've done wonderful renderings where Shiva's carrying Sati. Of course, she's supposed to be burned up, but just to give the visual, like say, drama, he's carrying her like this, in his arms, as a sort of a love story. The commitment to these two, inseparable. So Shiva was kind of sad about losing his wife, but she came and took birth again. The same, it was soulmate, and she became Parvati. And so it's a beautiful story. So Sati is famous for her commitment, just as Shiva is. Now let's go to fortune. So Lakshmi, everybody understands Lakshmi, right? Anybody's in this room, we know Lakshmi means this, right? And money is sweeter than honey. But when channeled properly, it takes on it's a different energy. When you use that energy, this what we call fortune, and misdirect it, our lives will be spoiled. And this we see in North American culture. A lot of our monies is not put in the right direction. If we don't oftentimes know how to prioritize, that's one of my, let's say, beefs against the educational system. They should be teaching students how to manage their money and relationships, two things. And we're striking really poor in both areas. We're bad in both areas. We don't do that very well. Anyways, fortune is there, and the best story to give an example of how fortune was misused is when Ravana attempted to kidnap Sita, the goddess of fortune, Ram's consort. He did something very cunning, and cowardly, I would say. He dressed himself as a sadhu. He put on the saffron cloth and disguised himself, and incognito as I'm a sadhu, and I'm here. He goes to Sita, and she's unprotected in the Dandak forest, and he says, "I haven't eaten for many days, and I haven't drank anything. Could you provide me with something?" He asks her, and she knows she's not supposed to, leave her spot, but he entices her. So then finally she gives in because after all, he's a sadhu. You know? There's no harm can come from a sadhu. So then, he cheated her and he took her and put her in his aerial chariot, and they soared high into the sky and ended up in Sri Lanka, which was his stomping ground. So then the whole world, you can say, was ticked off by this. And Ram had amassed an army, got his allies together, got a vulture, he got the help from a bear by the name of Jambavan. And then from the monkeys, there was headed by Hanuman. And he had all these allies. What a great army he had. And they all were set out to do one thing, to bring Sita back back to Ram's arms, and then back to her homeland, to Ayodhya. Yes. And so Ravan was mishandling the personification of fortune, and therefore he fell apart. He was cursed by Sita, by the goddess of fortune. And therefore a man who was very rich now had lost all his wealth, his empire, everything was destroyed. And it was Bibhishan, his brother, who actually took over the reign, became the new king, the new ruler, and left with this fairly happy ending. So fortune. When we think about a woman as fortune, as a goddess, for the man it means protection has to be there. This is what she represents. And so ladies, let your man protect you. Okay, fine speech. I'm saying a few things here because I'm from the old school. I like the heroism in the man and the heroism in the woman, the perfect lady. So here it is. We're talking about fine speech. When a woman speaks, there's a lot of honesty there generally, and there's a softness to it. There's a caring quality to it as well. And, because women have this tendency, from the very beginning, being the child bearers, they know what it takes to for a child to survive. I mean, mother bear, like I've walked through different parts of the US and Canada, and, we came upon bears, and that was always a concern. If you're meeting a mother bear with her cubs. There's this one situation where I was walking with a brahmachari. He's from Cuba. He'd never been to Canada before. He'd never seen a bear before, and never even saw snow before. So we were walking on what's called the Trans-Canada Highway, and it was in the month of May, from what I recall, yeah. And a biker came to us. He was going west and we were going east. And he was all in black leather and all that. And he says, okay, I'm warning you guys. Like talking kind of tough, it sounded like. And we were just worried, or what did we do? So I'm warning you guys. I'm on my bike here. I'm going at high speed, and a bear was after me. And that bear stayed right on me until finally I just kept going. So I'm warning you guys, there's a bear back there and you're walking into that bear zone. So then we kept walking. Thank you very much for the warning, we said. And we kept walking and walking and walking. And then finally we saw the bear. There was a bear. And that bear was in the ditch eating wild strawberries. And so I just decided I said to Giovanni, that's his name, Cuban brahmachari, said, let's stay here for a minute. Let's just enjoy the bear eating the strawberries. Okay, so there's two of us. So anyways, the bear was munching away, munching. And then suddenly the bear didn't like us being there. So the bear went like this. on the hind legs, and came looking big like this, and then came down. Okay, and I'm not exaggerating. This is exactly what happened. So then I said, okay, we're going to go now. And now you never run away from a bear. He'll come after you. Well, we got to understand that this was a mother bear. The males are quite a bit bigger in the black bear genre. And this we know that she had 3 cubs on the other side of the road. We found out later on by a bridge repair group of people that were there. They said, yeah, that mother bear has been around us all day, curious, and she's got her 3 cubs, and you were standing in between her and her cubs. So I just remember the protectiveness that a mother has for her bears, and that's kind of the nature. There was a beautiful story. It was set in Nova Scotia, and they did make a movie, Johnny Belinda, and it was like a deaf mute woman, and man took advantage of her like a hired hand or somebody in the barn, and then she got a baby, and the parents were wondering, well, how did she get a baby? Who did she meet? And then the actual father came at her at one point, and she took a shotgun and killed him because he was out to, to destroy her. That's a beautiful story, but we're just talking about the protectiveness of that a mother has for her children. So watch out, mom can be vicious, she can be vicious. So that's her nature. And some of the good qualities like fine speech are there when mother talks to her child or her paramour or partner. It's always sweet to the ears. Memory and intelligence, maybe we can lump them together. In the case of Sita, for instance, she could not forget Ram for a moment, and vice versa. It just did not matter what Ravan would offer her. You say, I'll give you half of my kingdom. I'll give you half of it. And he was serious. But she just wouldn't give any attention. No thought. There was no thought there. Not a consideration whatsoever. And that shows her strong commitment, because her memory was strong. And if we take some example, Prahlad Maharaj was another saint who he always kept Krishna in his mind, and that's why it didn't matter how much harassment was placed on him by his father, he just kept Krishna in his mind, and that's why he came out unscathed. So ultimately, remember Krishna. Prabhupada says nice things about females. I mean, sometimes people pull out quotations, and he says women are less intelligent. He never gets into it. He never explains it very well. And I always struggled with it myself for the first time I read the Gita. And because he doesn't talk about right brain versus left brain, and he doesn't talk about how women are intelligent in another way where men are not intelligent. He doesn't get into it, right? But to look at the balance, he does say many beautiful things about women. One thing he says that when you go to religious assemblies, where you go to a church or a mosque or synagogue, et cetera, the population of females is usually greater than the males. So women have a natural proclivity towards the spiritual. It's a good quality they have, okay? And I hope I'm not hurting any masculine egos by saying those things. It's just something Prabhupada said. Okay, and then now we're talking about intelligence. Yeah, if you're going to design a house, say I'm an architect and design a house, I might consult with a woman who's had a few children and lived with a husband and find out, well, what is the best way to lay out the kitchen? and the living room, because it's kind of her domain. You might ask, because she's got the experience, what works best, where should be the sink, where should we lay out the stove and all that. And modern day architects have done that kind of consultation. Ask the people who've got the experience in that particular area. So there is intelligence there. And steadfastness, that's the other quality. That the term is dhriti. Dhriti is also a quality of the Kshatriya. You can look it up, chapter 18, text 43. So dhriti means having a lot of conviction, a lot of determination. Like we were talking about the mother bear. She's just living for her kids until it's time to let them go, Also on that same trip, when I was walking across Canada, I saw lots of bears. I saw a lot of younger bears. They were their mom said she kicked them out. I've looked after you as long as I can. You're on your own now, buddy. Take care of yourself. I've done whatever I could for you. And that's also an intelligent thing for a mom and a pop to do. The kids you're the parents, but you'll have to let them be adults. I do plays. I look at comedy once in a while, and everybody knows what's the name of that guy, Jim Curry. Yeah, did I get it right? Okay, he does this one scene where he's like a mama's boy. I don't know if you ever seen the episode, and he's got like an umbilical cord connected to his mother. And she won't let him have any independence, and he kind of feels sorry for him. It's just the way it plays out. It's so funny, and it's kind of sad if you can't let your son be a son or a daughter be a daughter. And so, do not be determined or steadfast in being a mom, but let your kids be adults. Let them take care of themselves. So I was seeing, it's funny when you're on the road, the way that the younger bears, the ones that are not fully grown, when they look at you, they're very curious. They're not experienced, They're curious, and they look and stare at you. And then they kind of analyze you for a while, because I've gone through this so many times now. And then after a while, they come to the right conclusion. Human being, bad news. And they just go the other direction. Yeah. So this strong conviction, which we call dhriti, firmness, steadfastness. Let everyone carry out their certain responsibilities. So patience, Shama. We know how mothers are. They're very patient with us. We reflect back on the way you were with your parents. I can say I wasn't nice a lot of times, And I know my dad, for instance, and my mom, of course, they didn't like when we play an LP of Led Zeppelin or something like that. They didn't like that. Or even if I played Aretha Franklin, which I loved her voice, always did, still do to this day. You make me feel like a natural woman, for instance, like that. But parents are patient, and mothers really kind of, a good parent champions this patience, because they're dealing with a child that's very awkward, not yet an adult and not yet a child. And there's so much patience, and a child will cry, like anything, and the parent learns to tolerate, and because the child has biologically is closer to the mom usually because she's feeding. There's a strong bond there, And when it comes to mom and dad, well, dad usually has a little less time with the child. So he has to be what he has to do with the child has to be very stimulating. He has to make faces, play horsey, do real stimulating. I'm looking, and throw the child in there almost to the point where the child almost is going to lose it, like a grip, like dad's going to let me go and I'll fall down. But the father won't let that happen. He's just not going to let that happen. He's protective. So it's just funny to see how the father and the mother are with each other. And definitely there's a lot of patience that's demonstrated by the mom, who tends to be the glue to the family. And the male counterpart, usually he's designed more for ultimately renouncing, getting away, as they say, some psychologists, going into the cave, just being by himself, or going into a canoe, and just going for some fishing or something, like a quiet setting like that, and just being away from everything, so the design is a little different. And but I would just say that everybody can remember their mom for certain qualities, and their father, their dad, for other qualities. So it's interesting how Krishna wires us, in different ways, with different tasks and duties. They complement each other so well. And for me, to me, there's nothing more beautiful than seeing the perfect male and the perfect female together as a couple working together. There's nothing more beautiful. Hey, hugging. Yeah, so there's nothing more beautiful than that. And so that is epitomized in our deities that we have, whether it's Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and that group. We have Krishna, of course, and Radha. And of course, we won't talk about how Krishna has many queens right now, unless if you have a question in that area. And we have Lakshmi and Narayan, who are very proper, they're very stoic. Like Krishna is like this, he's a little bit casual, and Ram is a little bit more stoic like this. And of course, Narayan also has that disposition of being kind of like straight laced and so on like that. So those are our male deities. And when it comes to female deities, it's all about blessing, like Radha always extends her hands, blessings. And she'll oftentimes have her other hand out as if to offer a flower to the Lord, like this, very giving. So that's the beautiful thing about our tradition, is that we have divine personalities, and in the form of mom and dad. So while Krishna says ahang bija pradapita in the Gita, it says I'm the original, I'm the father, seed-giving father. It says seed-giving father of all living entities. At the same time, we have Krishna is identified as mother. So beautiful. We're up till 3:14, and I would just like to say happy Mother's Day, Haribol. And by the way, I'm sitting in the room here. This is a famous room for the Hare Krishna movement. Why do I say that? Because in 1976, Prabhupada sat in this room right here, where I'm pointing right here by the window. And the room was full of other people. There were some theologians, religious professors. One of them was Professor Joseph T. O'Connell. And he stood up for our movement many times, as when we were having difficulties, people thought we were cult. We were a malicious group and so on like that. Oh, thank you, Swami. And it was right in this room. Prabhupada sat here, and Professor O'Connell had asked, so Swamiji, what about female gurus? Do you have any female gurus in the movement, in the tradition? And Prabhupada said, yes, there are some, not so many, but there are some. And then he cited the example of Nityananda's wife, saying that she's a guru. So my point is here that this is a famous room, and I'm sitting right here. Prabhupada approved of female gurus. But, so I have embraced that women can be gurus, like Krishnanandini was definitely a guru in that regard. She didn't really initiate officially, didn't get that chance. We were on the verge of it happening, I'm telling you for sure. And, but you see, when you follow your duty, when you're a proper mother, you are a guru. When you are a proper father, you are a guru, not in the sense of initiation where there has to be a name exchange necessarily. Kids just need to see proper people, and that comes in the form of their parents. Your parents are the first gurus. And when they behave properly, then the kids will follow. They will just do that. And if we carry on and kind of like cheat on our partners and do all kinds of Kali Yuga activities, then kids will follow that. They look at that. They're not stupid. Oh, mom and dad do it. I could do it too. I could do it as well. So let's be good role models, and then kids will follow. Yeah, good. So Mother's Day means what? You have kids, so, right? And those kids are important. What would it be like if there were no children? Okay, let's say everyone just stop bearing kids. And what would the world be like? What would it be like? It would be hell. Just to be dealing with a bunch of old fogies, don't like each other. You just can't, if you don't have, children means sacrifice, that's what it means. And then sacrifice brings you closer to Krishna and to Radha, so on. Right? And that's why, I hate to say it, but in the world in which we live, people decide to have intimacy, but they don't want to have kids. And, what's the point? Okay, are you just enjoying? What about the responsibility that should, like, organically, that goes along with the union? It's children, right? Hare Krishna. My 2 cents worth. Hare Krishna.